I want to take a moment now to bring in Bret Baier, who is with us as well with his, you know what, first we're going to take a listen to this most recent barrage, and then we'll go to Bret. Watch.
Okay, this is some short-range systems. Stay here, Yaniv. Pull out a little bit. Okay, there's just a massive amount of fire coming to Tel Aviv right now. Yaniv, get ready to pull it off the stick. Get off the sticks. All right, let's go. Time to go. Okay. Guys, come on, everyone move. Everyone move now. Stay with us, stay with us. Pick up the gear, let's go.
Chilling moments just a short time ago. That was our Trey Yingst reporting from a balcony in Tel Aviv, and this is the site of one of where these explosions hit. We're waiting for more word on injured, but at this point, in the early information that we've received, it does not appear to be a large-scale injury in terms of casualties on the ground. So we'll get more information on that as we can. The third wave, as we have mentioned, has been underway, heading for Israel. President Trump saying, quote, nobody knows if Iran still has a nuclear program after Israel's strikes, which began last night. He also just spoke to Bret Baier, and Bret joins us now, Fox News chief political anchor and executive editor of Special Report. Bret, good to have you with us. Obviously, we're watching history unfold here in an enormous Israeli attack on Iranian nuclear sites and scientists, and questions about the U.S. and our pre-understanding of this and our involvement at this point. Good to have you with us, Bret.
Yeah, good to be with you. I'm coming from London, and I can tell you that President Trump clearly has been reaching out. I've talked to him a couple of times over the past couple of days. He's talked to a number of different reporters, expressing what he sees in this situation. It is clear from all of those conversations that there was a lot of coordination behind the scenes with the Israelis and a lot of knowledge about specific details. His conversations between and with Prime Minister Netanyahu, including today, speaking with Netanyahu, clearly formed his knowledge of what was happening. And his belief is that Iran has taken a really tough hit here. When I talked to him earlier today, he said the Iranians were hit 10 times worse than they thought they would be. They weren't ready to negotiate. I think they may be now. We'll see. You know, this comes, as we've been reporting, as this is really extensive as far as the decapitation effort, trying to take out senior Iranian leadership, the effort to take out Iranian nuclear scientists, very successful according to the Israelis and other U.S. officials, saying 9 out of 10 possibly of the top nuclear scientists were taken out, as well as other top leaders. And then obviously the nuclear facilities, as you've been talking about. I think we're just at the beginning of this, as you heard from Trey Yingst earlier, and Jennifer. The Israelis are suggesting the U.S. is helping on the defense of Israel. U.S. military not commenting on that yet, but this could be the first of many waves, both back and forth, from the Israelis going into Iran and then the Iranians retaliating with what we're seeing live in Israel.
Bret, we're just getting some information here that the Saudi Crown Prince and President Trump have been in a phone call discussing these regional developments, including these Israeli strikes, obviously, on Iran, and stressing the importance for de-escalation and resolving the disputes through diplomatic means. And, you know, it really sheds light. Then you have Netanyahu chiming in and talking about the fact that Iran has never been weaker militarily, politically, in terms of the structure of the remaining leadership in the government, which has been decimated, as have their proxies. So you have interviewed the Saudi Crown Prince and all of the players here over the last year and a half or so. What does this say about the larger shift in Iran's vulnerability and how the power structure may move because of what we've watched?
Well, I think that's a great question, one in which I think Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Israelis believed that this was the time to act. If negotiations were stalled, if the U.S. essentially had said, you do what you have to do, they believed since they struck in October that the air defenses inside Iran were really taken out significantly and had not fully been rebuilt. enabling perhaps a window that may have been closing to take out some of these targets. As far as the Middle East, you're right. The Crown Prince is now sitting in a position of prominence as far as trying to get different parties to talk, trying to get all of the parties together. He definitely spearheads the leadership along with the UAE in the GCC countries, and has a significant role in talking about where the Middle East is going. I think what they say publicly in the Middle East in some of these countries may be a little bit different than what they say privately. And they would like this to be over soon, but understand Israel's actions tonight.
You know, Bret, Netanyahu is speaking now to a message to the Iranian people and saying, I am with you. The Israeli people are with you. And we know how strong the Iranian resistance is. It has been very difficult for them to be forceful within Iran. Many of them have been imprisoned. Many of them have been killed for standing up to the regime. And you have a lot of Iranian resistance in other cities around the world that have been trying to support it. But you have to wonder if this is a moment that Netanyahu sees as potentially a time to overthrow this leadership in favor of the people who want to take Tehran and the country back to a place where it was a much more productive, vibrant culture and economy.
I think that's part of the goal here, regime change, and clearly stirring what they believe is a very young population inside Iran, that they saw the green shoots before of revolution in the Green Revolution in 2009 that was never really fully supported by the U.S. or others, and was then eventually put down by the Iranian regime. There may be indications, and remember that this is probably 8 to 9 months in the making, according to Israeli officials. And Axios had a great layout from various officials about how detailed this was, how much Israeli intelligence and Mossad had been active on the ground to find not only the leadership, how to get them together, also the scientists, but also perhaps having a sense of where that revolution flavor is on the ground in Tehran.
Absolutely. When you look at the layers, you look at October 7th, which clearly was an incredibly painful moment for Israel, and also a painful moment for Israeli intelligence and the IDF to have had that heinous attack on so many people happen under their noses. And then you see these extraordinary executions of operations like the Beeper operation in Lebanon that have completely dismantled the leadership of so many of these proxies, Bret. They are back on their game in Israel in intelligence when you talk about the extraordinary nature of this attack last night.
I mean, think about the killing of the Hamas leader inside Iran.
Yes.
That was essentially planted in a home 6 months before. Then you have the beeper and walkie-talkie, as you mentioned, those attacks and how detailed that was. And then you read a little bit about the attacks that happened just last night, including the pre-positioning of drones inside Iran that took out missile and ballistic missile launch sites. I think we're probably on wave number 1, 2 tonight. And from everything that Jennifer Griffin and others, and I've talked to some officials on the ground, we're likely days, if not weeks away from the end of this operation.
Bret, thank you very much. We'll hear from you later. Good to have you with us. Thank you. We'll see you soon.